In this episode, we're going to turn studying into something that fits into real life by building a spoken plan you can run almost like a daily routine, even if you are busy, tired, and new to the material. A lot of people begin with big motivation and then fade because the plan requires perfect conditions, like a quiet desk, long blocks of time, and constant focus. That kind of plan looks great on paper, but collapses when you miss 2 days and feel behind. What we want instead is a plan that survives normal life, which means it has to be flexible, repeatable, and easy to restart. The spoken part matters because audio-first learning works best when you are actively processing, not passively listening, and the fastest way to do that is to talk back to the material. By the end, you will have a simple system for what to say, when to say it, and how to measure progress without turning studying into a stressful second job. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyberauthor.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. The first step is accepting that consistency beats intensity, especially for a beginner learning a new professional language. If you try to do everything in long sessions, you will remember less than you think, because fatigue makes your mind skim and your confidence lie to you. A spoken study plan works because it turns small pockets of time into active recall, which is how your brain builds durable memory. Active recall means you try to pull an idea from memory before you look it up, and speaking makes that effort obvious because you can hear whether you actually understand it. When you say an idea out loud, you notice gaps you would miss if you were only reading silently. That is why the plan starts with short, repeatable blocks you can do anywhere, like in a car, on a walk, or while cleaning. Your goal is to create a routine that you can keep even on low-energy days, because those days are when most people quit. To make the plan realistic, you need a small daily script that you can repeat without thinking too hard about what to do next. Think of it as a warm-up, a learning beat, and a check beat, all spoken, all simple, and all designed to keep you moving. The warm-up is where you restate what you are trying to become, which is someone who can think like a qualified security assessor, QSA, and make defensible judgments. This is not motivational fluff, it is orientation, because it reminds your brain what kind of thinking matters. The learning beat is where you take one concept, explain it as if to a friend, and then connect it to at least one other concept, like how scope relates to evidence or how data flow relates to system boundaries. The check beat is where you ask yourself a question you cannot answer by repeating a definition, such as what decision would change if this concept were different. If you can do those 3 beats daily, you are building exam-ready reasoning. A big reason people fail to follow plans is that they confuse exposure with learning, especially in audio. Listening feels productive because time is passing, but your brain can drift and still give you the illusion that you learned something. Your spoken plan prevents that because it requires output, and output reveals whether learning happened. After you listen to a segment, pause and summarize it out loud in your own words. Then add a simple example you invent, even if it is rough. For example, you might describe a small store with a point-of-sale system and imagine where card data could travel. Then say what would be in scope and why. You do not need to be perfect, and you do not need to build a technical diagram. You just need to practice reasoning. Over time, your examples become cleaner, and that improvement is real progress you can hear. The plan is not just about consuming content. It is about converting content into usable thinking. Now let's design your weekly rhythm in a way that supports memory and reduces stress, because a plan you actually follow needs restarts built in. One useful pattern is having 3 kinds of days: build days, reinforce days, and reset days. Build days are when you learn new material and do spoken summaries with simple connections. Reinforce days are when you revisit recent concepts and test yourself out loud without looking, focusing on what you can retrieve. Reset days are when you do a short session that simply reorients you, reviews your core mental anchors, and gets you back on track if life got messy. The beauty of this approach is that missing a day does not destroy the plan, because the next day can function as a reset instead of a failure. Beginners need this because the learning curve is steep and shame is a powerful study killer. A plan that expects perfection is not a plan, it is a trap. A key part of a spoken plan is choosing what you will speak about, because you can talk for hours and still avoid the hard parts. The hard parts are usually decisions and distinctions, not definitions. For QSA learning, the most valuable spoken practice is explaining why one approach is defensible and another is not, even when both sound reasonable. That means your spoken prompts should often start with why and how rather than what. For example, instead of asking what scoping means, ask how scoping errors change the entire assessment and why evidence must match scope. Instead of asking what segmentation is, ask why segmentation claims must be validated and how that affects what systems are included. When you build your plan around decision language, you train the exact muscles the exam rewards. This also prevents you from getting stuck in a loop of repeating terms without building understanding. Because you are learning for an exam, you also need a spoken method for handling confusion, because confusion is guaranteed. When you hit something that does not make sense, do not stop studying and do not push through blindly. Instead, do a short spoken clarification routine. Restate what you think it means, identify the part that is unclear, then ask a focused question you want answered. For example, you might say, I understand that evidence must support conclusions, but I am unclear on what makes evidence sufficient in borderline cases, and I want a rule for deciding. That routine keeps you moving while also capturing the gap. Later, when you revisit the topic, you will learn faster because you already know what you are missing. This turns confusion into a tool rather than a threat. It also reduces frustration because you stop feeling like you are failing and start feeling like you are diagnosing. Another piece of the plan is building a small set of core explanations that you can refine over time, because repeated speaking is how you build fluency. Pick a handful of concepts that appear everywhere, like scope, cardholder data environment boundaries, data flow, evidence strength, and assessor posture. Each week, you will give a cleaner spoken explanation of each one, and you will add one new connection each time, like how scope affects sampling or how data flow affects what needs to be protected. This is like practicing a musical scale, where the repetition is not boring, it is building automaticity. Automaticity matters because on exam day, you do not want to invent your thinking from scratch each time. You want a stable framework you can apply quickly. When your spoken explanations become smooth, it means you are building that framework. It is also important to plan your spoken practice around real constraints like commuting, chores, and short breaks, because that is where audio-first studying actually lives. Your plan should assume you will study in imperfect environments, with distractions and interruptions. That means sessions must be modular, so you can stop and start without losing the thread. A good modular unit might be 10 minutes of listening, then 2 minutes of speaking summary, then 1 minute of self-questioning. If you have more time, you repeat the unit, but you never depend on having more time. This makes your plan resilient, because every day you can do at least one unit. Over time, those units add up, and because they include active speaking, they compound rather than evaporate. The key is treating small units as real study, not as a lesser substitute. To stay on track, you also need a spoken way to measure progress, because progress that is invisible tends to die. A simple measurement is whether you can explain a concept clearly without using the same phrases you heard, which proves it is yours now. Another measurement is whether you can answer your own why and how prompts without drifting into vague language. You can also track whether you can connect concepts spontaneously, like moving from scope to evidence to reporting without pausing. These measurements are stronger than counting hours, because hours can be empty if your mind wandered. Spoken progress is audible, and that makes it motivating in a grounded way. When you hear yourself improve, you start trusting the process. Trust is what keeps you showing up even when motivation fades. As you get closer to test day, your spoken plan should shift from learning new content to performing under exam-like conditions. But you can do that without turning it into a stressful experience. In later weeks, spend more time doing spoken question drills where you read a prompt, decide the question type, state your reasoning, and then choose an answer, all out loud. The goal is to practice your process, not to chase perfect accuracy on every item. When you get something wrong, your spoken review should focus on the rule you missed, like misunderstanding sequencing or assuming facts not in evidence. That way, each mistake upgrades your thinking rather than discouraging you. This also trains your emotional response, because you practice staying calm while being wrong. Calm recovery is a major performance skill in timed exams. A final ingredient is building restart friction that is low, because the real test of a plan is what happens when life interrupts it. Your spoken plan should include a default restart script you can do anytime you missed a day, and it should be short enough that you will actually do it. That script can be as simple as restating your role orientation, summarizing 2 core concepts from memory, and then doing 1 short listening unit. The point is to regain momentum, not to punish yourself with a marathon catch-up session. Catch-up sessions usually fail because they feel overwhelming and reinforce the idea that you are behind. A restart script creates a quick win, and quick wins rebuild consistency. When you design for restart, you build a plan that you can keep for months, not just for a week of motivation. To wrap up, a spoken study plan you will actually follow is one that treats learning as a daily practice of active recall, simple explanation, and role-based reasoning, rather than a heroic effort to absorb everything perfectly. You build it around small modular units. You measure progress by what you can say clearly, and you protect your momentum by planning for resets and restarts. The plan works because it turns audio from passive listening into active thinking, and it turns confusion into a structured signal you can address later. Most importantly, it keeps you aligned with what the QSA exam rewards, which is defensible judgment and clear reasoning under constraints. If you keep showing up and speaking the material into your own words, you will feel the shift from unfamiliar terms to confident mental models. That is when studying stops feeling like guessing and starts feeling like training.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.